Hey everyone, didn't expect to have to do another Q&A so soon, but here we are. 10,000 subs. Thank you all for your support. Here's to continuing to learn and explore as much as possible. Now, this may be called the questions and answers, but I do not have all the answers. I try my best. Thanks for all your questions though. Let's begin. Kipper asks, do you have any relatively non-political interests or experiences that significantly influence your political philosophy? Yeah, my poetry and art as a whole really influenced my desire to free all people and allow them to live creatively. My entire life story got me to where I am politically. My life experience was a cement for anarchist principles, let's just say. Pedro Gonzalez asks, favorite music? Assuming you mean genre, it really depends on my mood. Sometimes I'm jazz, sometimes I'm rap, sometimes I'm soca, sometimes I'm reggae, sometimes I'm R&B or lo-fi or hip-hop or pop. Bobby Tracy asks, give us your thoughts on veganism. I don't have any thoughts on veganism. I mean, at its core, I appreciate the practice, and I've been trying to move in a more plant-based direction lately. Jazz Befos asks, how do you recommend I talk to my friends and classmates about socialism? I often come off as arrogant or aggressive. Yo, I understand how frustrating this kind of discussion can be. All that capitalist realism is so drilled into folks' heads. But be patient. Radicalization is a deeply personal process that differs widely from person to person. For some, it's all about framing, for others, they need to be argued with, and for others still, they just need one answer. Be patient. Just dialogue with them about the issues they care about, the issues you care about, and why you think socialism is the solution. Try to be informed, but understand that none of us have all the answers, so stay humble. I tend to recommend the Socratic method for these sort of discussions. Truth is, a lot of people just don't know why they believe what they believe, or they have had the time to think about a particular topic before, so they kind of give automatic responses. You can ask things like, what do you mean when you say that? What alternative ways of looking at this are there? Who benefits from this? What are the positive and negative consequences of that assumption or belief? What would it mean if you gave up that belief? Approach the conversation in a collaborative way, and you'll go a long way. It's not a fight. It's a journey. Cool Guy asks, what are your thoughts on individualism/egoism? Well, I think individual versus collective is a bit of a false dichotomy because you can't really have one without the other. And honestly, I have no strong opinions about egoism. Haven't read any of the literature as far as I know. Anarchy361 asks, favorite and least favorite anarchist writer/figure? I mean, I like Malatesta and Alston a lot, I'm sure you could tell, but I don't think I have a least favorite. I don't really think about figures and thinkers and that kind of thing that much. Trans PKK Ball asks, opinion on the PKK as a whole? Mad respect, that's it. Asker25 asks, what are your thoughts on the squatting movement, past and present? Based, of course. To quote Kwasi Balagoon, the landlords must be contested through rent strikes, and rather than developing strategies to pay the rent, we should develop strategies to take the buildings. We must not only recognize the squatters movement for what it is, but support and embrace it. Set up communes in abandoned buildings, sell scrap cars and aluminum cans, turn vacant lots into gardens. And he added later on in a soldier's story, these ongoing programs are to continue year in, year out, with the goals of revolutionizing squatters' unions and organizing regional land banks, where groups of collectives pool resources to buy large tracts and connecting tracts of lands in given areas, around and away from where the organization began, and most importantly, until neighborhoods are transformed into common communities. This is not only to initiate people's control of their lives and show the power of organization, but to demonstrate the logic of socialism and justice and the desirability of revolution. Shadow Beanie asks, thoughts on guns? I don't live in the US and thus do not interact with gun culture. Honestly, I've never held a gun in my life, unless you count Nerf or nothing. You asked me not to just throw out the under no pretext Marx quote at you, so I won't, but being totally unarmed for revolutionary action is a recipe for disaster. What I think people need is a healthy relationship with guns and a strong understanding of gun safety. I believe Tactical Girlfriend on YouTube is a great source for this. My patron Forrest Alvarez asks, what does it mean to be productive, and is productivity an important goal of yours? I'm going to assume you're asking, what does it mean for me to be productive? And I'd say that means producing the projects I would like to produce on a rhythmic and regular basis, making progress towards the completion of my short-term and long-term goals. Productivity is very important to me. My days are basically structured by a to-do list. I plan my month a week in advance, and I even have a 5-year plan that I update occasionally. I honestly have an unhealthy relationship with productivity, which is something I'm trying to change. I tend to run my blood to water instead of taking breaks. So yeah. My patron Lucian Lawrence asks, what is your view on what the future of international aid should be in a post-colonial, post-white man's burden context? What is your view on a migration toward NGOs simply providing direct cash payments instead of providing services? I'll answer the second question first. I think direct cash payments are better in many cases, and I do plan on talking about international aid in the future, so you'll see my thoughts on that once I've done enough research and pondering. Cognaut Gaysworth asks, I want to learn more about the history of colonial resistance. I was wondering if you would be interested in a video on the history of resistance movements against colonial governments, or at least point people into some research websites / books, or even recommend some YouTube channel to discuss the topic. Yeah, I'd love to talk more about resistance movements in the future. Once I catch up apps to do it, I will. Resources wise, I'm coming up empty right now, but if I do think of some, or if someone in the comments does, go through. Anarchy.hk asks, what are your thoughts on recognition, both federal in the US and internationally, when it comes to national liberation? I don't expect our true liberation to be recognized by those in power. That would require a concession on their part and a rupture of their grand illusion and their monopoly on power. I don't think our liberation needs to be recognized because whether it is or isn't, our aim is not to reinforce their legitimacy as arbiters of humanity. My patron Zachary Michaels asks 3 questions. What are some authoritarian / anti-anarchist historical figures, theorists, or even contemporary content creators that you admire, or at least have advanced your thinking in some way? What are your thoughts on communalism? How do you feel about anarchism that is anti-democracy? First question, Frantz Fanon most readily comes to mind. He had his quirks and his blind spots, but I think I would enjoy discussions with him. And he's definitely advanced my thinking. Second question, communalism is cool and has influenced me a bit, but I need to read more about it to form a more fleshed out opinion. Third question, I understand the anti-democracy anarchist crowd stance, I think, but in my view, democracy is a useful synonym for people's power, and I think there's rhetorical benefit to claiming it. Gay Millhouse asks, you tweeted about wanting more stories and fiction. Have you found any that you've loved recently? Yeah, I've been reading Walk Away by Cory Doctoroy, and I recently read Gods, Monsters, and the Lucky Peach by Kelly Robson, and The Black God's Drums by Pete the Jelly Clark. Excellent, excellent books. Carl Keane asks, which work of fiction do you believe presents the most attractive picture of a global or universal society? I haven't found such a work yet. I mean, The Dispossessed, maybe? The one and only DOGG asks, nice, what are your favorite fiction books? It's really difficult to answer this question, not only because it's hard to choose, but also because I've had a bit of a hiatus from fiction, and I've only recently begun to get back into it. I'd say my favorites are The Deep by River Solomon, The Giver by Lois Lowry, The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, Every Day by David Levithan, and Pride by Ibi Zoboi. Curtis Boute asks, what Solarpunk fiction / books would you recommend checking out? Of the stuff I haven't recommended before, I recently read Ecotopia by Ernest Kallenbach. There were some weird, outdated aspects of it and incomplete politics, but I found it very inspiring otherwise because he was very descriptive in his explanations of the various aspects of ecotopian society. Shrimpzilla asks, favorite movies / TV shows with leftist themes? I've watched Sorry to Bother You several times, it's a great flick. Love Parasite as well, Planet of the Apes series too, kind of, Snowpiercer, Princess Mononoke, and Akira. But TV show wise, I honestly couldn't think of anything. Xander asks, how do you feel about the influx of new subscribers and comments as we've gotten more popular? Do you moderate them? It's exciting but also a bit anxiety inducing. Like, I'm so glad I'm able to reach more people with this project and introduce people to concepts and ideas they may not have considered before. Plus, I hope to use this platform to provide more information on praxis, which can go on to positively impact the world. But with any influx comes a greater measure of trolls, racists, genuine questions, rude critics, expectant DMs, and overall scrutiny, which is hard to manage. Plus, I have to navigate my own commodification and those who put me on a pedestal. I stay embedded in a community with people who have my best interests at heart, so they provide correction, guidance, and catharsis, and keep me sane. Strangers on the internet, though, I try my best to answer good faith comments and guide folks on a personal level, and take criticisms into account, of course. I obviously can't read everything and respond to everything. I definitely can't get into a back and forth debate with every random who disagrees with me. Not just because I have a life outside of YouTube, but also because I don't need thousands of other people in my head all the time. I try to maintain my peace. The more I grow, the more difficult that will be. And the more I grow, the more some people on the internet will start to forget that I'm human. I'm trying to keep my comments racist-free and respectful, so yes, I do moderate my comments to block trolls and clowns. They get no voice here. Jiffy Chips asks, who are your inspirations and what are your future plans for the channel? I'm inspired by the legacy of my ancestors' resistance and the struggles of colonized peoples worldwide. Future plans wise, I've got a few collaborations upcoming, and I'm planning an 11-part magnum opus series that I may end up turning into a book. The only hint I'll give is that it's about the Caribbean. Jackie Cotillard asks, do you see potential for coalition building from Breadtube and folks like you whom I think of as Post-Breadtube / New Online Left? Is it worth pursuing a potential organization / mobilization of these audiences? And to what end might that be most effective? What a term. Post-Breadtube. Interesting. I'm not quite sure the implications of that would be. I am connected with a few other small creators and a small handful of large creators, and we've had similar discussion, but I haven't had the time to sit down and really work out a plan like that. Zach asks, what are some other small YouTube channels you'd recommend? Saber, Car, Z Matthews, Alki, Professor Flowers, Anansi's Library, Anarch, Red Plateaus, Twin Rabbit, and Lucky Black Cat. Matt Lipton asks, anyone you know IRL who knows your channel? Any other left tubers you'd like to collab with? Yes, my friends were some of my earliest subscribers, and I've helped radicalize them, I think. I don't want to give too much away yet, re-collabs, but I've got some upcoming. I would love to work with folks like Khadijah Mbowe, For Harriet, and Intellectual Media though. Had to shoot my shot at some point. Groucho Marxist asks, in your last Q&A, you described your ideology as post-civilization. How, in your view, would such a society care for the needs of chronically ill and disabled people? This is a big misconception. I would direct you to the introductory Post-Civ text, link below. There are aspects of the text that I disagree with, but basically, Post-Civs aren't primitivists. We don't reject technology or medicine. We refuse to blanketly reject everything that civilization has brought us, and we're not trying to go back to hunter-gathering. We just want to look forward, not backward, towards better, balanced, ecologically minded solutions. Vedin Shimak asks, how would the internet function under post-civilization? Would humans be able to continue space exploration and expand automation and other technological pursuits? The internet will continue interneting. As for space exploration specifically, I don't see human space colonization as a realistic or important goal at this point in time, but general space exploration and study is cool. Flaming balls of gas are nice to learn about. Isaac Murray asks, are institutions for centralized justice compatible with anarchism? No. NN asks, how would we make sure that our communes and democratic federations won't become tribal? And how will we ensure the free movement of people across the world? Tribalism here being defined as the behavior and attitudes that stem from strong loyalty to one's own tribe or social group, particularly the exaltation of the tribe above other groups. I believe that exchange, communication, and the facilitation of free movement are a good remedy against that mentality. Also, I find the second question odd. How will we ensure the free movement of people across the world? In reality, states and borders are what's preventing that movement more than anything. But anyway, I have a video on borders coming up soon. Takinka asks, do you think people can be overly dogmatic about anarchism? And if so, how do you think one can avoid that? Anyone can be dogmatic, but having that self-awareness is a good guard against it. One Dime asks, how would one go about establishing anarchist communism within a globalized capitalist system? Much of the anarchist projects that are around today don't really challenge global capitalism and exist at the mercy of the US military or domestic military. You gave the examples of Chiapas and Rojava, but slight correction, Chiapas and Rojava aren't anarchist, though I would call them broadly anarchic. And to the meat of the question, this is a very complex discussion, because when we speak of the global, we paint over the local. The global situation is overwhelming. I genuinely believe humans aren't built to think at such a mind-bogglingly massive scale. I mean, there are close to 8 billion people on Earth, which is why I tend to emphasize local activity and international solidarity. Truly, an answer to this question could fill books, which it has, so I'd recommend looking at Anarchy Works, Prefigurative Politics, and an Anarchist FAQ. Chris Ayers asks, what are your thoughts on tactical unity between anarchists and MLs? I could give a lengthy response, but my comrades have already done the work for me. Check out the State is Counter-Revolutionary series by Anarch, and Means It Ends by Zoe Baker. Link below. RJ Golden Doodle Pup asks, are anarchism and religion compatible? What are some of your thoughts on sectarianism of the left and leftist unity? Furthermore, do you think we can/should synthesize ideas from anarchism, Marxism, and postmodernism? First question, yes, anarchism and religion are compatible, but we have to recognize that religion is political. And it's important for radical folks and religious communities to approach the more reactionary elements with a more critical eye, which, credit where credit is due, I have seen them do, but they can and should get louder. Second question, I don't believe in the left. It's far too broad to be useful. Third question, yeah, I don't see why not. People have already been doing it. Live and let live is how I generally vibe. Lucas Brains asks, what do you think of post-structural anarchism, specifically the works of Deleuze and Guattari, and I guess also Foucault in a sense? I'm not going to front with you, I have not read any of these people. I don't even think I've read any French philosophers before. I did watch Little Prince though, cute movie, nice soundtrack. And I've heard of Anti-Oedipus, but it's not really on my to-read list, honestly. Sell me on it, if you will. Barat the Creator asks, thoughts on accelerationism? No bueno. Whether it's the far-right efforts to bring about a race war and white ethno-state, or Zizek's idea of welcoming the chaos of right-wing leadership to bolster the left, or Nick Land's bizarre technocratic madness? No bueno. No gracias. No thank you. Eric Nielsen asks, kinda related to the other question on Deleuze and Guattari, what are your thoughts on gender accelerationism and more generally the analysis of gender as a class system? Also, have you read the Gender Accelerationist Manifesto? I haven't read it, but I've skimmed it. If I understand correctly, it's a rejection of and fight against gender. If so, vibes, go through. Do what you gotta do. Gender as a class system reminds me of Abdullah Öcalan's recognition of women as the first colonized group. I found that was an interesting way of framing things. I'll have to look into it further to have any sort of strong opinion on it though. Anarchopil asks, in your recent video on Black anarchism, you discussed the intersection of being both Black and anarchist, among other identities, and how it has transformed anarchism. What's the hardest part about being a Black anarchist? What's the best part? The hardest part is global anti-Blackness. It's everywhere, and so-called radical circles are far from exempt. A lot of non-Black anarchists and leftists seem to believe BLM or ACAB in bio is an automatic shield against any accusations of anti-Blackness, and they refuse to introspect, so I continue to maintain my policy of block and move on, whether they were talking to me directly or not. I also got a couple of comments that were basically all lives matter but for anarchism, so that was random. You found a lot of bold-faced and defensive anti-Blackness in streamer communities in my experience. It is what it is. However, the best part makes it all worth it. The best part of being a Black anarchist is being able to connect deeply with the experiences of my community, bring together the diaspora and solidarity, and draw from our noble ancestry of resistance. Luke the Duke asks, opinion on market socialism and people who are supporting it by saying they want to work within the boundaries of the current system? Huge L on both counts. Crowcracks asks, do you support the debate culture? Or do you think there are other, better ways of communicating ideas to people? Nah, I don't. I get that it's controversial, but the online debate culture is more to do with flair and presentation than actual arguments or substance. Sarah Z did a video on it, and I think win-lose conditional conversations are unproductive. I think one-to-one conversation is the best way to communicate ideas to people, because everyone is different. But second to that, I think accessible content, one-to-many, works well to introduce people to complex or unfamiliar ideas without falling into that sort of toxic, aggressive subculture. Plus, the debate streamers I have interacted with lack humility, which is a serious problem if you want to call yourself a radical. Atanasio Garcia asks, are you spiritual or religious? I grew up Christian, tried and failed to connect with it at the age of accountability, and after a while I realized it wasn't for me. I still learn about it though, and I honestly find the history of early Christianity particularly interesting. Maybe someday I'll feel some sort of spiritual connection or experience, but nada for now. X Orpheus asks, do you foresee a resurgence of European Neo-Paganism in Western cultures in the coming years? If so, do you see this closely aligning itself with Anarchism? I don't think much about Europe. However, I have heard about Neo-Paganism, and I'm friends with a couple anarchist Neo-Pagans. They seem committed to the fight against whiteness, so that's good. I can't speak on the movement as a whole though, or where it's headed. Patch Blunt asks, would you rather fight a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? I'll go with the former. Sure, a horse-sized duck would be terrifying, but let's not underestimate how big a 100 is. Holly Rose asks, how do you feel about the medical field in general? I kind of feel like doctors are just information capitalists and are cops to disabled people. Not to mention the medical field's role in systemic racism. I think we can all acknowledge the medical field needs to do better. The Journal of Visual Online Folk Culture asks, what would you view as your blind spots in terms of standing up for the rights of others? And Anirudha Sharma asks, do you sometimes feel as though, despite all the reading and research you do, you don't learn fast enough? Great questions. I've combined them both because they're related. Though I wouldn't call them blind spots per se, I think I can do more to learn about disability justice, queer liberation, and body positivity. And yeah, Sharma, despite all the reading and research, it only deepens and widens the ocean I must navigate. My navigation skills are getting better, my nautical maps are improving. That means I can see exactly how vast this ocean is. There's no land ho, but I'll continue to go. Maintaining humility and openness to learn and be corrected tends to help with this. Diana Blanco asks, what are your thoughts on uniting Latin America? Is it possible? Do you think it would help? Is it compatible with Andrewism? I'm not too familiar with the history of Pan-Hispanism, but I'll say it depends on what's meant by uniting Latin America. In the sense of one single state, I think that would be a mistake. In the sense of free association, collaboration, and unity between the ethnicities and cultural groups of Latin America against colonialism, settler colonialism, imperialism, machismo, blanqueamiento, white supremacy and capitalism, and towards a liberated continent? Bet. Definitely possible. Bruno Barbosa asks, 5 tips to be more Solarpunk on a daily basis? Maintain a compost bin, thrift and mend your clothes, walk when you can, create seasonings, and learn to repair your stuff when they break. Clinton Baird asks, what are the best ways to get involved in direct action for beginners? Let me take a different approach to answer this question and talk about my own experience pre-COVID. Me and a couple of friends have been pretty anxious about the impending climate catastrophe. It's difficult not to be. We had done some protests and marches, but it was clear that did nothing. So we wanted to go further. Of course, as beginners, we were chasing too many butterflies at once. Some were fairly liberal. We got distracted with meetings sometimes, ended up just linemen, and it took some time for us to get focused. Plus, we were students. We were juggling a lot of other responsibilities. And some folks just weren't as committed as others. I'm telling you straight, it's not easy, especially just starting off. Be prepared to fail, to make mistakes, to have people and plans fall through on you. Still, we eventually discussed and planned a particular strategy as a group to handle a particular situation. Not giving details for obvious reasons. We were real hot and sweaty to start off, but alas, we were condemned by lockdown. Eventually the group fell apart. And it was disappointing. It wasn't the end of my organizing, but it did suck. And I still learned some valuable lessons. Allow discussion and dialogue before you just act for action's sake. Find committed people. Organize around particular projects. Have a clear goal in mind, because you can't do everything at once. I hope this wasn't too vague, but I say this to say, don't wait. Just get started. Somewhere, somehow, with some people. You'll learn along the way. For further reading, CrimeThink has a great article in Direct Action, which I'll link below. My patron Matt asks, do you have any advice on how to start community skill shares, education, services outside of obviously being charities rather than true mutual aid? Whenever you have a question about mutual aid, try to return to the word itself. Mutual, meaning of a feeling or action expressed or done by each of two or more parties towards the others. Aid, meaning help, typically of a practical nature. So if you're looking to start a skill share in your community, start by asking folks in your community what skills they have and what skills they want to learn. Start a group with weekly or monthly meetings where folks can get together, and each time, one person shares a skill with the others. Have snacks, have music, have games, have fun. You learn, they learn, everybody's happy, and everyone's a bit more skilled. A charity approach to this would be waltzing in and announcing that you're hosting classes and bringing in a teacher or teachers. Mutual aid is about relationship building and community building. Hope this helps. Luca Hanel asks, effective mutual aid for people who are short on time? That's up for you to determine based on your lifestyle and restrictions. Just recognize that since mutual aid is about long-term relationship building, it's not something to rush through like an errand. Even if you're only able to meaningfully help one person, focus on that. Toon Trooper asks, what can we do to further the advancement of revolution if we are introverted or have bad social skills? Leo1798 asks, any suggestions for overcoming social anxiety when organizing? I really try to reach out to local orgs that have all been inactive or unresponsive, and I feel like I should try organizing myself, but I don't have any politically active friends and my anxiety makes it tough to form connections with new people. Pim Cormant asks, do you have any advice on how to join a direct action group as a neurodivergent person? So, I combine these for obvious reasons. I understand that a lot of folks struggle with introversion, social anxiety, and neurodiversity, which aren't things I really have much experience with as a lifelong neurotypical extrovert, and so I really wasn't sure how to answer these questions. I mean, I could devote to cliches, like remembering to breathe, exercising, join a club, stay in touch with your loved ones, celebrate small successes, but I want to tell about it a bit more. And my answer is not going to be complete because I think this is where the community, the hopefully healthy, collaborative community I built on here, can step in and lend some assistance. I asked a couple of friends of mine and they shared what they could. Everyone overestimates how bad their social skills are, but as long as you're genuine, caring, and conscious of consent, some form of organizing will always be possible for you, even if it's just on a one-on-one basis. I know for some autistic folks, marches and riots can be very anxiety-inducing, so you may need to invest in quieter forms of resistance. And before you get into all that heavy stuff, you need to start working on the heavy stuff within you. Get to know yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, likes, dislikes, to determine what you'd be best at. Trying to organize without working to understand yourself, your shortcomings, your flaws, is a setup for failure. See my video on why revolution needs therapy. Also, radicals have a seriously bad habit of placing the flashy, out there forms of direct action and organizing above the quiet, care work that needs to be done within communities and organizations. The stuff that tends to be done by non-men. The implicit assumption is that one is more important than the other, but you should be doing whatever it is that you can be best at. There are different things that folks can get involved in to help prefigure a better world. Don't feel pressured to do organizing that you're simply not able to do. Now, specifically for Leo 1798, if local orgs have been inactive or unresponsive, and your friends aren't politically conscious, don't give up on your friends. You won't always be able to find like-minded radicals in your area. You have to work with your friends and family and truly put in the work to bring them into the fold. What helps with this is that you already have an established relationship with these folks and a measure of trust. it's easier to start in that foundation. If you can get them to tag along with you for some guerrilla gardening or something, that can give you an opportunity to engage with them more about your vision for a better world. And if you can find another like-minded radical in your city or town, stick together and find out how you can network with them. Keep security in mind though, because that makes it hard to reach out to new people. But there's no harm in taking that first step, whether you're sending that first DM or starting a book club at the library. Meet yourself and the people where they're at. Set your pace. Work on yourself. Work on yourself with others. Work on others with yourself. Hope that helps, somewhat. Hong De Kong asks, do you think we'll see any meaningful change in the world within our lifetimes? Without a doubt. Change is nature, fam. The part that we can influence. And it starts when we decide. That's all, folks. Take care. Peace. Good.